Howdy, welcome in. Welcome in to the Dallas Cowboys Optimist. I am said person, I'm Chris, but I am the Dallas Cowboys Optimist, sometime to my chagrin. But welcome in, welcome to the channel. Glad you can join in. We can talk about our beloved Cowboys. Never too early, never too late. But I'm going to start off today with a topic I sort of wrestled with internally, externally for a long time. Who are the top 10 greatest Cowboys of all time? It's such a deep list, such a deep bench, and that's the tough thing, is sort of getting it down to 10, and that's where a lot of the nut cutting is going to take place, and I'm going to go over with some detail. But when you get to the top, it gets a little more chalky. I mean, maybe the order will be a little bit divergent. My order will be a little bit divergent from the typical order, but everyone's pretty much got the same guys near the top. But it's getting that top 10, rounding out that top 10 toward the second half that's a bit tougher. But a little bit as an aside, I've always been, as I mentioned with the channel, of course, I've been an optimist. I can remember my first memory of the Cowboys, I think when I initially got hooked and I became a Dallas Cowboys fan for life, through and through, was as a kid. I remember my first memory was watching that Super Bowl. I think it was Super Bowl VI. Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers. I think there were as many as 20 Hall of Famers when you include coaches in that matchup. 15 of them, I believe, players. So just a great game, great team, and such a heartbreak. I think it still sits with me today, unfortunately. I don't know how, but when I think about that Jackie Smith, not quite a Bill Buckner moment, but maybe in the eyes of Cowboys fans, maybe many of you guys still feel it too, but I can still see it again in my head right now and feel the pain of it. Although, albeit it was the third quarter, and that would have tied the game at 21 apiece, but Roger hit Jackie Smith, a Pro Bowl tight end, Hall of Fame tight end, in fact. And I think that was his, I think he spent 1 year with the Cowboys there. I think that was the 16th year. I think it was with the Cardinals for maybe 14, 15 years. But we picked him up, Pro Bowler, and it was an awkward sort of tough catch, but I mean, you're Pro Bowler, you got to make that catch. Hit him right in the chest, bounced right off his shoulder pads, and that would have tied the game. I say at 21 apiece. Who knows? They lose 35-31. Maybe that makes a big difference. I would imagine it would, but that still stings today. But my father and I have always kind of gone back and forth ever since. I mean, he's always been a Dallas Cowboys optimist, a pessimist. And so I've always sort of, I guess, countered that in our relationship. It's always been fun through the years. It gets a little bit contentious, but he's always of the mind of, I'm done with them. They've disappointed me enough. I've had enough heartbreak. That's it. I'm not watching them again. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And he's always going to come back. Or they're never going to win anything with Jerry in charge. And I mean, he's been a little bit right on that so far. But I think that's changing in my estimation. But so that's how it was kind of born, that whole optimism. And my dad's always called me a cockeyed optimist. Maybe irrationally optimistic, but I would say never delusionally optimistic. I'm always able to take in all the information, see where we need improvement. But that's how things were sort of born out. And let's see, I tell you though, I got to say this year, I don't think I've ever been, in my recent memory, I can't remember being as optimistic as I am about this season coming up, with Christian Parker coming in, and just really the flexibility and the way the front office is showing they've sort of looked at the way they've been doing things, and we're in free agency, which is that was nice to see. I mean, we're not the Philadelphia Eagles, but we're out there at least shopping. We're looking for some bargains, and we're getting some pretty good bargains, paying a decent tag for PJ Locke. I think Kobe Durant was a good pickup, and these are all, I think, Christian Parker directed acquisitions, and that was great to see too, is just Christian Parker's influence on the draft. I think he was able to shop for the groceries he was looking for, Bill Parcells style, and it was just great to see that they, first of all, they didn't go really with an Eberflus, a sort of retread at defensive coordinator, and they went with a young, really hot, intelligent mind to head the defense. So I can't wait to see what the defense is going to do this year. I think as an optimist, I think they can go from the ash heap, from the absolute rubbish heap that they've been, to maybe top half of the league defensively. And as an optimist, I think it's possible maybe top 10. I think I'm going to do a video upcoming of what it would take for them to be a top 10 defense. Who's going to need to develop, step up, who's going to need to stay healthy, those sorts of things. So I think that'll be fun to look at, and I think it's possible. I think I love the acquisitions. Of course, you got to love the draft. Caleb Downs, unbelievable. But I love where it's going. I mean, now I'm already sort of, this isn't necessarily optimistic, but I'm a little worried about Christian Parker doing so well that he's going to leave. And of course, I've worried about that even with Will McClay for years, that he's going to want his own team, he's going to leave. But he seems to enjoy working with the Joneses, and he's done such a great job. And hopefully he enjoys that and he continues to stay on board, because he's been a revelation. Really, the draft's been great for the most part. If we can stay away from those Michigan guys, Mozzie Smith, the Tacos of the world. But we've got Barham this year, so I think he looks like and maybe that's just more of a Christian Parker influence pick. So he looks like he could be a great player for us. We'll see how he develops and how he's looking in training camp. But going back to linebacker, but he's obviously got great versatility, having played defensive end. But it's going to be great to see. I'm so looking forward to this season, getting into training camp. I think I hope it kind of flies by this year. But let's get into it. I'm going to start off, and like I said, I'm going to go through a bit of an honorable mention list. This was the toughest part, because you've got so many guys that are worthy to be recognized as top 10 all-time talents for the Cowboys. And for some of these, I had to kind of lean on my dad, because he grew up watching them, probably back to the inception, 1961. I don't remember some of these guys. I never saw them play at all. So I leaned on my dad a bit. And then in that department, so it's someone like Mel Renfro, not top 10, but 52 career interceptions, Hall of Famer. Never saw him play, but my dad said he was just a great player, great difference maker. Chuck Howley, I think he won an MVP in a Super Bowl, being Super Bowl V, is that right? But my dad mentions him as a great player, part of the Doomsday defense. Cliff Harris, I did see a little bit of him. Of course, I saw him in that Super Bowl I mentioned, but he was a Hall of Famer, great player. Great defense they had there in the secondary with Charlie Waters. Rayfield Wright, another guy on that team, Hall of Famer. I think he had six Pro Bowls. Great stabilizing force on that offensive line, and member of a great team there. But Rayfield Wright, I never really saw him play. Wouldn't know enough to, honestly, to put him up there. Wouldn't have enough information or eye test to know how good he was. But I think you look at most people say that Rayfield was a great player, but probably not top 10. And then it gets tougher with those older guys. Like I say, I don't have really a perspective to know, but when you look at modern day, you look at any, say from that Super Bowl VI on, I think I've got enough perspective. But it gets tough. So one guy, initially when I thought of the top 10, I thought of, you have an initial gut reaction, who's going to be in your top 10? I think about this guy. I thought, this guy's got to be in the top 10. And the guy I'm talking about is Darren Woodson. I just feel like he would have to be a top 10 Cowboy. Meant so much to that. He was really the head of the snake for those teams. That 1994, they had the #1 defense. Other Pro Bowlers, they had Leon Lett, Charles Haley. I think they were the only other Pro Bowlers on that defense. But he was really kind of the straw that stirred the drink. Such a versatile player, linebacker at Arizona State, came in playing safety, so he's great in run support, elite in run support, but great coverage in the slot. So it's hard for me to imagine that he wouldn't be top 10, but when you look at it and you break things out and you see who's ahead of him, I had to leave him out. He was 2000's All-Decade team. He says he's all-time leading tackler for the Cowboys. And I think he'll be a Hall of Famer. I think he's deserving to be in the Hall of Fame. But you could say it's really tough with that safety position. It's been crowded. There's been a queue there for years. And you can see some of the other guys, his contemporaries that went in ahead of him, I could see and say, yeah, that makes sense. And John Lynch, Brian Dawkins, great safety, great player. But you hope that Darren Woodson doesn't become a casualty of time, that as other guys come up. You got Rodney Harrison, I think, was a semifinalist. When you look at the numbers, I think Rodney Harrison will probably go in ahead of Darren Woodson. I think Rodney Harrison was the only guy with 30 interceptions, 30 sacks as a player. So, and a member of those great Patriot defenses, big time winner, big time enforcer in the secondary. I think I would put Rodney Harrison in ahead of Darren Woodson. You got other guys coming, Earl Thomas, although I think I'd put Woodson ahead of Thomas, but it can happen. I mean, you look back at even the other safeties that have been sort of factored out over time. You look back at Deron Cherry, great safety for the Chiefs, was an all-decade team, over 50 interceptions at safety. And another guy, Nolan Cromwell, was a great safety. I think in 1980, he was a Defensive Player of the Year, all-decade team. I think he had four straight Pro Bowls, if I'm remembering that correctly. But great player. I mean, he's certainly deserving. So you can see that it's just in, I think it was 2022, Leroy Butler got in, which you can make an argument there between those two, but Leroy Butler does have better numbers overall. I think you look at, I think he had something on the order of 35 to 38 interceptions, where Woodson had maybe 23, 24 interceptions. I think he had more sacks too. I think he had maybe 20 to 10 sacks. Numbers were better. Butler won a Super Bowl. Of course, Woodson won 3, but I don't know. That's a tough one to call. They made the call that Butler was the choice, but yeah, I'm hopeful Darren Woodson will be in before long, and too much time doesn't pass us by. But so I'm gonna take him out. We're gonna leave out Darren Woodson, to my chagrin. And this next one I'm gonna leave out, I think is I think Zach Martin will leave out, but I think in time his resume is going to sort of gain credibility. Just the consistency, his technical acumen as a guard. I think he's top 10 among all guards all time. Maybe that 9 or 10 spot among all guards. Just outstanding player. I think you have to leave him out at this point. But this guy was the toughest to leave out, and it was really between this guy and the number 10. You can say he's the number 11 guy on the list, but between he and number 10. But I'm going to leave out Jason Witten, and I don't want to. There is a little bit of an element here. I'm not hating, but Jason Witten, there's a little bit of a. It's not like Rob Parker used to describe Matthew Stafford as Stat Patford. Now, it's not to that degree, but it's. I don't think he'd call him that now, but there's a little bit of that with Jason Witten, but because his numbers are so gaudy, they're so over the top, great numbers. I think he. Let's see. He led the Cowboys total receptions, 1228. Of course, yards for a tight end. I think receiving yards total is 12,977. I think Irvin had maybe a little under 12,000 yards. But 74 touchdowns, had 11 Pro Bowls, and he had 130 games, with consecutive games with a reception. Then he had 18 receptions in one game, I remember, against the Giants, I think, but he only had like 160 yards, so it's a little bit of that. I mean, he's getting, 9 yards a catch. So it's a little bit of that element, and he's got the iconic moments. You can remember the running down the field with no helmet on, not stepping out of bounds, not going out of bounds, taking head-to-helmet contact. That's Cowboy. So it's hard to leave him out, man. Just love Jason Witten, but at the same token, when I think about Jason Witten, I think about a tight end. I do think about Jay Novacek too, who no one would probably have near the top 10, but I don't know, for me, Jason Witten, obviously the great inline blocker plus the great receiving tight end. But Novacek was really outstanding, especially in the playoffs. I think he had 60-something receptions in the playoffs, maybe 700 yards in the playoffs. But Troy Aikman's safety blanket, and I think he had 5 or 6 Pro Bowls, but great route runner, great hands. Obviously, 235 pounds, he wasn't going to be much as a blocker, but great weapon in that offense, along with all the other weapons they had, and Harper and Irvin and Emmett. But it kind of gives me a little solace that if I'm going to leave out Witten, I'm leaving out Novacek too. And in some ways, kind of like Novacek, maybe not saying versus Witten, but I can see that. I don't know, if you gave me a choice, put a gun to my head, I might take Novacek. Anyway, so that was the toughest one, and then so let's get into 10. Now we're ready to start the countdown. I'm gonna go 10 to 1 So my guy, like I said, I'm going to be a bit divergent in the top half of the top 10, but I think a lot of people would have him a little bit lower, but I got to go Charles Haley at top 10 as number 10. And I can, of course, remember how just he was such a dominating force, always double teamed, chipped, double teamed and chipped. And, he didn't necessarily have, he had really good, solid guys on the D line with him. Jim Jeffcoat, Leon Lett, of course. But I don't know, as a threat, Charles Haley was always the focus of an offensive coordinator's game plans. We got to block this guy. We got to put in special blocking combinations to deal with this guy. Leon Lett, I think, only had 22 and a half career sacks. Anyway, I'm not disparaging Leon Lett, but I'm just saying Charles Haley was doing, and he was really the final piece, I believe. I think Jerry said the Cowboys really couldn't even spell Super Bowl until Charles Haley arrived. So he brought in just great prowess as a defensive end, but he brought in that attitude of, he was already a Super Bowl winner 2 times with the Niners. I think the Cowboys, I don't know, I'm trying to remember what they gave up for him. If it was I think it was a second and a third round pick for Haley. A guy with 100 sacks, Hall of Famer. And like I said, he didn't have necessarily, he had good guys, good support around him, had a good solid defense, a lot of depth, but it wasn't like he was playing next to Jerome Brown, so to speak. Like, you look at a lot of the great defensive lines, defensive linemen, they usually had a really strong running mate with them. Or I look back at the fearsome foursome, who was that Merlin Olsen, I think 14, 15 straight Pro Bowls. And you got Deacon Jones, he's the progeny for the term sack. And then also, there's your 2 Hall of Famers right there. But then you had Rosie Greer. I think he was a Hall of Fame finalist. I don't think he ever made the Hall of Fame. He's still out there. And then Lamar Lundy, another great player at that time. So all those guys working together, but taking focus off one another. Sort of, you couldn't focus on one guy. You couldn't block one guy. That was a great defense. Look at Gang Green with Reggie White, of course, and Clyde Simmons. I think Clyde Simmons led the league in sacks one year with 19. And then Reggie, of course, I think 87 was a shortened year with 12 games. He had 21 sacks. Imagine what he would have done, now in a 17-game season. But outrageous. And then Jerome Brown, obviously there. Maybe a lot of people put him in the same sort of neighborhood as Reggie White, maybe just right there, close to him in terms of being a force in the middle. And then you had the other guys. I think Mike Golick was a good player. He was kind of like the fourth tenor, the third tenor, kind of the unknown guy, but still solid player out of Notre Dame. And then you had Mike Pitts there, was another good backup there, another bit of depth there in the defensive line. So what an amazing defense they had. Seth Joyner, Eric Allen, but Reggie White and Jerome Brown together working with Clyde Simmons. I mean, yeah, and then you think about it, he was another great, you look back at the Cowboys, look back at the Doomsday defenses. I mean, you had Randy White with Harvey Martin, Too Tall Jones. Even back with Bob Lilly, you had Jethro Pugh and Larry Cole. So anyway, I'm just saying all that to say that Charles maybe didn't have quite the help on the defensive line that some of these other great defensive Hall of Famers have had. So I got to put him in there. And I think I just remember him as a force, and like I say, to me, he was the missing piece, the last piece in getting 3 Super Bowls. Obviously, he won 5 altogether. As I said, over 100 sacks, Hall of Famer. Then let's go down. Let's look at, lastly, I was going to say, let's go down. Speaking of defensive linemen, let's put number 9. And this, some people may have him lower, which, take me to task on these rankings and these numbers, this order, but I got to go DeMarcus Ware, number 9. I don't think I get a whole lot of pushback on it, but 117 sacks as a Cowboy. I think he had 138 total with his time in Denver, and he 32 forced fumbles. I think that's a record for the Cowboys. And first team All-Pro 4 times, 4 first team All-Pros, and he did pick up a Super Bowl with the Broncos. Maybe they kind of let him go a little bit early there, of course, but I guess they were looking to let him go early rather than late. But he was a great force. I mean, he led the league in sacks twice, I believe, and I think he had 21 Yeah, I'm trying to think back. I'm trying to think who. Anyway, I'm losing my perspective there because I'm thinking back to Mark Gastineau. Interesting, Mark Gastineau, one year he had 20 sacks. One year, Joe Klecko had 20 and a half. So that was a sack exchange with the Jets, just as an aside. But yeah, DeMarcus Ware for me is a solid 9. And then 8. Maybe a little low for some people. And my initial thought, I had him higher just because I really value his influence on the team and driving force of the team, Michael Irvin. He was really the emotional leader of the team, the glue in many respects. Great competitor. And so I think he had 1 first-team All-Pro, 5 Pro Bowls. The playmaker was the driving force with the triplets. Just an essential cog in that 3 Super Bowl winning team. And then number 7, I'm going Tony Dorsett. He's probably my first favorite player for the Cowboys. Had to have that Dorsett jersey. Super Bowl champ, of course, he had the iconic 99-yard run against the Minnesota Vikings. Just great breakaway speed, always a home run threat, can take it to the house on any carry. And almost 13,000 yards. He had 1 first-team All-Pro, but surprisingly made 4 Pro Bowls. I thought he had made more than that, but he was still an electric runner, electric force, Heisman Trophy winner out of Pittsburgh. Just a great player, great compliment. And now let's go to 6. 6, I'm going Larry Allen. I think probably say he's one of the top 2 or 3 guards all time. Right there with John Hanna. Probably right there with Bruce Matthews, if you classify Matthews as a guard. I think Matthews played every position on the O-line, I think. But I think he was originally a guard. Maybe played most of his time at guard. He did, but yeah, right there with Matthews, Hanna. All-time great yard. Of course, the 700-pound bench press. That's an iconic moment to think about, but that was his sort of strength, speed. Of course, the run down on, I think it was Monday Night Football against the Saints. Run down on the interception. That's iconic. He was a great player. Finished up with the Niners for a bit, but 325-pound, just road grader of a guard. So he won, let's see, how many Pro Bowls did he have? Let's see, Larry. All-Pro, 6 first-team All-Pro, 1 second-team All-Pro. So essentially 7 All-Pro seasons. Just an amazing player. I think it was a Savannah State, 3rd-round pick out of Savannah State. Number 5, one of my favorite Cowboys of all time. He was one of the first guys I really, along with, I think Tony Dorsett was the first favorite Cowboy, but this guy was such an amazing player. Randy White. Got him at 5, the Manster, anchor of Doomsday 2. But at 6'4", 257, even though everyone was a bit lighter back then in the offensive lineman, but he was throwing around those offensive linemen like rag dolls with just sort of the bench press move. And always double teamed. I mean, I would be surprised if he was double teamed virtually every play of his career. Double teamed, sometimes triple teamed. And he did have Harvey Martin, Too Tall Jones there with him, but he was the focus again of every offensive game plan was how do we block the Manster, and his numbers are gaudy. He had a co-MVP with Harvey Martin. Super Bowl was that, Super Bowl 12, all-decade team, 8-time All-Pro, along with a total of 9 Pro Bowls, 111 sacks at the defensive tackle position. Amazing, just an amazing player, an amazing career, and funny enough, I think he was the 2nd overall pick out of Maryland, 1975. Let's see. Yeah, I think he's number 2 selected. Spent the first 2 years as a backup linebacker. So, I mean, what if we'd got him in the lineup sooner? Anyway, just a great player, iconic Cowboy, truly dominant. And again, that co-MVP of a Super Bowl. Yeah, that's some pure dominance. Okay, let's go to number 4. Troy Aikman, I've got it 4. 90 wins in the 90s. He's got the Super Bowl 27 MVP. He's got, of course, a 3-time Super Bowl champ. You know, just a great leader, great calming force, I think, with Jimmy there. Really, you know, he and Jimmy had some, I think they butted heads a bit, especially after early on, Jimmy, I think it was the same draft, drafted his quarterback at Miami, Steve Walsh, in supplemental draft. I think a first round pick supplemental draft. So he had to deal with that immediately. I think within the next, I think 1990, Steve Walsh got dealt to the Saints, I think for a first, second, and third. So it ended up being quite a, maybe Jimmy had that in mind all along. He probably did, but quite an astute move, quite an astute return on investment. And I believe in that that deal, Steve Walsh, that they made, I think they got back the 1, 2, and 3 turned in, 2 of the picks turned into Russell Maryland and Eric Williams. So yeah, quite a haul. And that was after the great trade robbery just a year before with the Herschel Walker trade. I think they had some extra picks. I think they, and in fact, I think, yeah, he used one of those picks to move up and get Emmett, which we'll get into because, yeah, let's get into that because, yeah, I'll get into that in a second. Number 3, leaned on my dad a bit for this one because I didn't really see him play, but everyone sort of knows that Mr. Cowboy, Bob Lilly, I mean, he's sort of embodies what it's meant to be a Cowboy. He was the first pick ever, 1961 of the Cowboys, and 14 years, 7 first-team All-Pros, Super Bowl 6 win, missed 1 game out of 196 games played, possible games played. He missed 1. He's just the anchor of that original Doomsday defense. And he was on the 75th and 100th anniversary teams in the NFL. Just an iconic player, an iconic Cowboy, Mr. Cowboy. Number 2, some people may have these flip-flopped, and I can understand why, but number 2, as you can imagine, it's going to be one of these 2 guys. Emmitt Smith, number 2 for me, all-time leading rusher, 18,355 yards, 164 touchdowns, 4 rushing titles. He had 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons, 8 Pro Bowls, and he had that one 1993 season, Triple Crown season, where he had the Super Bowl MVP. He had MVP and the rushing title, so it was really like a quadruple crown. And then that same season, I believe, is when he had the separated shoulder game against the Giants. I think they both were 11-4 coming into that game. So everything was on the line at the New York Giants at the Meadowlands. And it was, everything was on the line. The NFC East title was on the line. And it was going to mean the number 1 seed in the playoffs, home field throughout. Emmett separated his shoulder on a hit, I believe, in the second quarter. But came back in one of the gutsiest performances and really carried the Cowboys to a 16-13 overtime win. I think he had about 240 some odd yards total, 168 rushing yards, I think. Just one of the gutsiest, most notable performances ever. I think John Madden, maybe the only time in his career, went back in the locker room to shake Emmett's hand after the game. I think that, if I remember that correctly, is John Madden made that special trip in the back. But what else can you say? I mean, I think I've said it all. He was just, I think most of those, he did spend 2 years with the Cardinals, just a couple of mop-up years, but just a great all-time iconic player, great Cowboy, represents the Cowboys such a classy way. But the ultimate guy in class, as you can imagine. Oh, I did mention this, that before I get to that, Jimmy did move up. I think it was 21 with the Steelers up to 17 to take Emmett. He gave up a 3rd round pick that turned into some guy named Craig Vesey for the Steelers. Just an aside. Back to number 1, Roger Staubach, of course, Captain Comeback, Captain America, America's team. He was just embodied what it meant to be a pure class act, just a representative of the Cowboys, the ultimate representative of the Cowboys, extension of Tom Landry, even though he, with Tom Landry, also had to deal with Craig Morton, and I think at one time they were splitting reps. I think Craig Morton played in that first Super Bowl against the Colts. So Landry didn't say immediately embrace him at quarterback. It took a little time, but they became to greatly respect one another. And I didn't realize, I was looking this up, but I think it says, let's see, Roger, he had to do a tour of duty in Vietnam. and he didn't join the Cowboys till he's 27. I remember that sort of vaguely, but gosh, I mean, if he joined at 21, 22, I mean, what is his career have yielded? But that's an incredible sidebar. But he's got 750 or 750 win percentage over his career. Great winner, always in the game with Roger, captain comeback. He's Super Bowl 6 MVP, 2 Super Bowl wins, of course, 4 Super Bowls. As I mentioned, he went up against the Steelers, unfortunately, twice. And that team, maybe the greatest team ever. And that first time, it was really a defensive battle, but second time around, it was Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, Bradshaw, 4 touchdowns, 35-31, but anyway. So yeah, the sterling character, the tenacity, he led the Cowboys on 23 game-winning drives and 15 fourth-quarter comebacks, so hence the captain comeback name. So just the ultimate Cowboy, and 13-7 in the postseason. And that 1975 Hail Mary against the Vikings to Drew Pearson. Just so many iconic moments. I mean, there's no telling how many. The toughness was also unquestionable. There's no telling how many concussions he probably had back in that day. He just likely went back in the game with a concussion on a number of occasions. But what a great play. I think he even remarked it a few times. He didn't know he didn't remember certain sections of a game. But that's it. That's the list. That's the top 10. So as I mentioned, take me to task. Let me know where I really went wrong here. I feel really great about this lineup of players. It did change a bit. As I went through the numbers, and it was really fun to go back and look through the numbers and sort of recall some of these guys, and even looking at the guys that were older guys like Mel Renfro, just how great they were. Number of Cowboys, like I say, like Zach Martin that retired. Maybe their numbers as they age might. Or their careers as they age might sort of ripen and push them up the list, like Zach Martin, Tyron Smith. I'm a little surprised Eric Williams isn't even listed on a lot of lists in the top 20, but anyway, and maybe Darren Woodson will move up to that Hall of Fame nomination, but that's it. And I think that's going to do it for today on the Dallas Cowboys Optimist. We'll be back. I'll be back soon. I think I'm going to do, I might do a video on the upcoming season with the defense, what it's going to take to get in the top 10. I also want to look at the top offensive lines of all time. Where does that Cowboys offensive line with Eric Williams, Tuinei, Nate Newton, Stepnoski, where does that rank among the all-time great offensive lines? So look forward to that. I'm going to be, throughout the season, I'm going to be doing probably two shows. I'll be doing a preview every week. I'll be doing a recap every week. So subscribe, tune in, and look forward to great training camp, and look forward to seeing you throughout the season. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.